Hi everyone, how's life, and welcome to 24 things I did in 2024. So yes, before we get into the video though, I do want to wish you all a happy new year. I know we're about a week into 2025 already, which is crazy, but yeah, exciting things to come ahead in 2025. But before we do that, I also want to talk about 2024, and this is something that I've been doing since 2015. So this is actually my 10th year of doing these like yearly wrap-ups, and it's also probably going to be my last one. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I just don't think I'll be doing this style of video again this time next year, because when I started this in 2015, I went with the premise of, 15 things I did in 2015 back then, and 15 things to come up with is a lot easier than 24 things, and as the years keep going, I'm gonna have to come up with even more things, and I just don't want that pressure on myself. But like I said, with this being my 10th year doing this, I did want to do this last one, and we did some really cool things in 2024. So this is going to be quite a long video, quite a chatty video, so maybe go and grab yourself a coffee, a hot chocolate, a tea, some water, anything you want to, and spend the next half an hour or so with me just chatting about life. And I am going to go through the list chronologically, so we're going to go from January all the way to December. And the first thing I did in 2024 was back in January of 2024, about a year ago at this point, and that's when I got to take my mum to Walt Disney World in Florida for the very first time. She'd never been to Disney World. As a child, we only ever went to Disneyland Paris, and so I was hugely excited. As you can imagine, I love Disney World, and I remember how I had felt when I first went to Disney World in 2015, about 10 years ago at this point, and so I couldn't wait to take my mum there and show it to her. But equally, I was also a little bit apprehensive. I wasn't sure, if she was going to enjoy it or not. She hadn't been to any Disney theme park for about a decade at that point, so I just didn't know. I know that my mum loves Disney. She likes the Disney films. She likes, fantasy, imagination, things like that, but I just wasn't sure how it would go. Thankfully, she loved it. She absolutely loved it, and on that trip, we only got to visit 3 of the 4 parks. So we went to Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and Epcot. Of those 3, her favorite was Magic Kingdom. She loved it so much, and Hollywood Studios she enjoyed quite a bit as well. Epcot wasn't her favorite, but I feel like we didn't, explore it enough. Maybe if she spends a bit more time there, she might like it more. But then again, I'm the same. I didn't really like Epcot the first time I visited it. I still don't think it's one of my favorite parks. So like mother, like daughter, or maybe I should say like daughter, like mother. But yeah, that was a very special trip for me to spend it with my mom, especially after the tough year that she had the previous year in 2023 with the really scary accident that she had, and because of that, our 2023 was affected quite a lot, and I was really happy to be able to do that for my mom. We were only there for just under a week, about 6 days, so it wasn't a long trip by any means, but it was a special trip, and I cannot wait to go there with her again. Speaking of that trip though, the second thing I did in 2024 is that I got to stay at the Grand Floridian for the very first time. Now, this is a hotel that I never would have imagined I would get to stay at anytime soon. Like, it wasn't in my plans to go all out and stay there anytime soon, but when I started to think about taking my mum, and I looked at different hotels, and I actually showed some of them to her as well without explaining much. I was just like, in terms of the styles, the looks, what do you think you might prefer? And to be honest, she was up for anything, so really it was down to me to decide what would work best. And I wanted to go all out for my mum, and I knew, especially because of the accident that she had the year before, her mobility wasn't too great, especially back in January. She's getting better every day. She still has a lot of pain, and I know loads of you are going to be asking, so I just want to say thank you so much. My mom really appreciates you asking after her, and I appreciate it as well. It means a lot to both of us. But yeah, she's doing better now. But in January of 2024, last year, can't believe it was last year at this point, she still wasn't fantastic with her walking. So I wanted to make sure that she's somewhere where she wouldn't have to walk too long, she wouldn't have to wait too long, for buses, things like that. And so it was between a few different hotels for me. I was either thinking of staying somewhere near the Epcot resorts, Epcot and Hollywood Studios, so the Beach Club, Yacht Club, Boardwalk, one of those 3, or one of the Magic Kingdom resorts. And Grand Floridian had to be the one, and it was the best decision because she absolutely loved the Grand Floridian. I mean, on first impressions, after the long travel day that we had getting there, because we didn't actually fly direct, when we got there it was late at night, and like already just from stepping into that hotel, she fell in love with Walt Disney World. She loved everything about it, the customer service, the cast members, the beauty of the hotel, of course. She felt the magic. And yeah, because of that, the Grand Floridian has now become one of my favorite hotels as well. I mean, who wouldn't love that hotel? It's a beautiful hotel. It's a deluxe resort. It was a dream stay, and we actually got to spend a lot of time at the resort as well. And this is another reason as to why I decided that would be the best place for her to stay, because I knew that she wouldn't necessarily be the type of person who would want to spend all her time in the parks. I wanted to make sure that she would actually get some time to enjoy herself, relax a little little bit and enjoy the amenities in the hotel too. So that's exactly what we did. So yeah, can't believe that we got to stay at the Grand Floridian together, and hopefully we'll get to do that again at some point. Number 3, or the third thing I did in 2024. Well, I shouldn't really say I did because I was completely unconscious for it. I went under surgery. I had my very first surgery. I've been very lucky throughout my life that I haven't ever had any major health problems or anything like that. I've never had to stay in the hospital for myself. When my mum had her accident, bless her, I spent a long time with her in the hospital looking after her, but I'd never been in the hospital for anything wrong with me, if you know what I mean. But in 2024, I finally had a surgery that I only realized I needed about 6 months or so before. I made a whole video about it. If you haven't seen it, I'll leave the link down below, but it was an open myomectomy, basically, if you haven't seen the video yet. I had a huge fibroid, a massive fibroid, which is basically normally a non-cancerous tumor, and mine was, I think, something like 15 centimeters. So it was big, and it had been growing in me for many, many years, according to my surgeon and my doctors. I just didn't know about it, and it wasn't found until about a year ago, and it had to come out. Like, there was no way around it. My surgeon could not believe, when she first did the ultrasound, she couldn't believe how big it was and how long I'd been living with it. And what fibroids do is that they just continue growing. So by the time we discovered it, I think it was around 10, 11 centimeters. By the time it was removed, it was 15 centimeters, like my surgeon actually measured it, and I have a photo of it as well, which again, if you want to know all the details, check out my vlog from the surgery. But I'll be honest, I was terrified to have the surgery. I was excited because I knew that it was obviously needed for my health. Like, you can't just live life with a huge tumor in your body. It's going to affect loads of things, and it had been affecting so many things in my life. So I was happy to get rid of it, and I had a couple of other smaller fibroids too, which were also removed with that big one, but the main one was the one that was causing the problems. But equally, because I'd never, you know, been under anesthesia, because I'd never had surgery done, I was very nervous. And if you ask any of my friends, they will tell you that for the 3 months leading up to it, especially the last couple of weeks, I was nervous. You know, it was like the main thing that was on my mind. But like I said, you know, my surgeon did an amazing job. I'm so happy that it's out. And whilst the recovery wasn't obviously easy, and, you know, the recovery period hasn't actually even ended yet, it takes about a full year, is what my surgeon said, for it to fully heal. So I've still got another couple of months for it to be fully healed, I guess. My friends and family made the recovery journey a lot easier. Huge shout out to my family, because especially in the first few weeks after, I wouldn't have been able to survive without them. You know, I was relying on my family for everything. I couldn't stand up or sit or lie down even on my own. Everything needed help, and I hated it. I'm a very independent person, and having to ask for help was not something that I enjoyed, but it was also very necessary. And I feel like I grew as a person because of it. As cheesy as it may sound, I feel like it was something that, you know, helped me become a little bit better as a human being as well. So yeah, I am happy that that was done. Whilst we're on that topic, I also want to give a lot of love to any of you guys who've had a similar surgery, or if you're going to be going under surgery anytime soon. I know that when I first, you know, published that video, I had so many comments both on that video and DMs and emails from other people having fibroids or having gone through something similar or waiting on surgery. And it was very powerful actually to kind of talk about these things and supporting other people, women supporting women. You know, I think women's health often can be not taken seriously. And, you know, for me, my fibroid is something that really should have been discovered years ago. And it's not like I hadn't had problems before. I'd gone to my GP plenty of times with problems, and it just wasn't taken seriously ever until about 2 years ago. So yeah, good luck if you're on that journey. I wish you the best. I promise you that you will feel much better once whatever fibroid you have is out of your body. Now, I feel like I've already rambled quite a lot, so I'm going to try and get through the rest of the list a little bit quicker. So the fourth thing that I did in 2024 is that I tried my very first frog legs. That's right. Frogs and their legs, a very culinary thing, and that's because I was very kindly invited by Fork in Film to go and attend a screening of Princess and the Frog. And basically, Fork in Film, if you haven't heard of them, check them out on Instagram, they're amazing. But they do different film screenings of very popular films that have food in them, and whilst you're watching the film, any food that they're eating, or, you know, anything that might relate to food that they are having in that film, will also be presented to you. It's almost like a restaurant and the film experience together. It was very, very cool. I'm actually going to be posting a full reel about that at some point soon, so make sure you follow me on Instagram. But yeah, they served me frog legs as part of the experience, and I was like, why not? And to be honest, they tasted pretty good. Number 5 is that I went back to Asia in 2024. So in May of 2024, I went on a 2.5 journey to Asia. I started with Hong Kong Disneyland, and it was so cool being back in Hong Kong. I had about 3.5 days in the parks, and then I actually spent about a day or so in Hong Kong as well, which I hadn't managed to do before. So it was my second time going to Hong Kong Disneyland, but my first time actually getting to experience a little bit of Hong Kong as a city, which I enjoyed. And it was also just very nice to be back in Hong Kong Disneyland. The first time I'd gone was in 2019, so it had been about 5 years, and I love that park. It's a small park, but there's so many cool things about it. It's very relaxed, there's a lot of charm to it, and I had a great time, and it was the best way for me to start my Asian trip. And all the vlogs from Hong Kong Disneyland are on my channel in a playlist of their own. Same with Shanghai Disneyland, so I do have a whole playlist if you want to check out any of my Shanghai Disneyland vlogs from 2024 as well. But I was so happy to get back to Shanghai, especially because I hadn't been since 2016, so it was my second time visiting, but I had waited about 8 years to go back. And when I first got to visit Shanghai Disneyland in 2016, of course it was the grand opening of it. I only had a couple of days there. It was very overwhelming, it was huge, it was like what everybody was talking about, and I enjoyed it, but I really wanted to go back and see what it's like now, you know, during normal times, if you know what I mean. And I loved it. I mean, Shanghai Disneyland is definitely the most modern of the Disney parks. It's obviously the newest one, even though it was opened in 2016, which is nearly a decade ago at this point. But yeah, I love the rides there. I love so many things about Shanghai Disneyland, but I will say that it's not an easy park to navigate. It's not an easy culture to navigate. It's probably the better way of putting it, especially somebody coming from the West. So if you are visiting Shanghai Disneyland, then make sure you subscribe, because I will be doing a couple of videos about how to plan Shanghai Disneyland and the other Asian parks as well, and things that you might need to know for your first visit to Shanghai Disneyland, because it's absolutely worth going. And not just to Shanghai Disneyland, I mean, you know, Shanghai itself, other areas of China. If you've never been before, there's so many cool things for you to go and check out. But for me, one of the most exciting things that I got to do in Shanghai Disneyland on this particular trip last year was to go and check out the new Zootopia land, which I was so excited to see. I mean, I'm a big Zootopia fan. There's going to be a Zootopia 2 coming out soon, so I love the area. There's only one ride there, but all the little details in that land was so fun. I really hope that Disney one day decides to build something similar in one of the Western parks, because as much as I love Shanghai Disneyland and I would love to go again at some point, it's definitely not the easiest park to get to. So somewhere more accessible for those of us living in the West would be nice. But if you haven't checked out the vlogs from that, especially the Zootopia one, again, I would highly recommend you do so. The link is down below, so you can see the whole playlist or whichever video that intrigues you from that trip. Moving on from Shanghai Disneyland, the 7th thing I did in 2024 is, of course, go to Tokyo Disneyland, and that was my second visit to Japan and Tokyo Disney. I had gone for the first time in 2023 with my aunt and cousin. Fell in love with not just Tokyo Disney, but the whole country, you know, Japan, the culture, everything. I love Japan, and I was so excited to be able to revisit Tokyo Disney. Now, the Tokyo Disney side of that trip was something that was added later on. Initially, I was planning on going just to Hong Kong and Shanghai Disneyland, but then Fancy Springs was announced to be opening literally around the same time that I was already in Asia, and I thought, why not? I'm already there, I'm already in Shanghai and Hong Kong, which aren't too far from Tokyo, only about a couple of hours of flying time. So about 3 months before my Asian trip, I decided to add on Tokyo to it, and I went for a week, and I got to see the new Fancy Springs in Tokyo Disney Sea, which was beautiful. Like, by the time I got to see it, it had only been open for about 3 or 4 days to the public, and I love that land. I mean, I love Tokyo Disney anyway. I love Tokyo Disneyland, I love Tokyo Disney Sea. They have so many incredible rides and food and characters and shows there. Even without Fancy Springs, it's one of the most incredible experiences that any Disney fan could have, in my opinion. But with the addition of Fancy Springs, it was even better, and I had one of the best days, you know, exploring all of Fancy Springs in Tokyo Disney Sea. And I have a full video of that as well if you want to check it out. The link is down below. But I loved my time in Tokyo, and I did it all solo too, which was great because I could take my time and really, you know, explore everything the way I wanted to and make sure that I take it all in. So it was amazing. What wasn't amazing is the 8th thing that I did in 2024, and I still can't believe it actually happened, but I missed my flight. So again, I have a whole video on this, but you know, leaving Japan and on my way out to Japan, I was meant to fly back to Europe, to London. I had no other, travel plans from then on. That was going to be my last country to visit. And I had booked a flight through Air Miles, and I was going to be going from Tokyo to, I think, Frankfurt and then on to London. It was going to be a very long travel day, but I was happy that I managed to save quite a lot of money by using Air Miles. I think I only paid about 200 quid for it, which is cheap for such a long amount of flying and being in the air. But I missed my flight. I literally missed my flight, and it's something that had never happened to me before. I had never missed a flight before, and considering I travel so often, statistically there's more chance of me ever missing a flight, but I just couldn't believe that it actually happened. And honestly it was very stressful. It was difficult. I was obviously there on my own. I was stressed, I was tired, I was annoyed at myself. And again, there's a whole vlog of that, like I said, if you want to check it out to see exactly what happened, why I missed my flight. But yeah, I was flying out from Narita Airport, and just like a little tip for you, if you're flying to Japan, Narita Airport is quite far from the city center of Tokyo, and it's something that since I posted the video, a couple of you guys have messaged me, some of my friends have as well actually, to say that they have had very similar experiences where they've either nearly missed their flight or they've had to change their flight because of whatever reason. The transportation to Narita Airport isn't the easiest, like it takes a while, and I had booked a bus that was meant to get me to the airport at a certain time, but it got to the airport 2.5 hours later than it had advertised. So yeah, by the time I got to the airport, my flight hadn't actually technically left yet, like it was still there, but obviously I wasn't able to get on it because it was less than half an hour before my flight was going to take off. So yeah, stressful times. But again, I like to see the positive side of everything. I feel like I learned a lot from that experience. I mean, I had to spend about 12 hours on my own at the airport waiting for the next available flight. I had to navigate trying to book a different flight, and it was all a bit of a mess. And obviously I did lose about 200 quid on that situation as well, which was not great. But again, I learned something. I don't want to ever miss a flight again. Even if it means getting to the airport like 5 hours early, or like booking a hotel next to the airport, things like that, at least with Japan and Narita Airport, is something that I'm gonna bear in mind for future travels. Next, we move on to something that concerns you guys, and it's that back in May, I think it was May or June, I started my Patreon and also my YouTube membership, and it's been so lovely chatting to you guys and getting to know some of you a little bit more intimately over on Patreon and also on YouTube memberships. I tend to do some live shows every now and again on YouTube memberships, and on Patreon there's a whole community of us. So if you haven't checked it out, the link is always down below. Don't feel like you have to, but if it's something that you think you might be interested, have a look. And I do just want to take this opportunity to say a huge shout out and thank you to my lovely Patreon members and my YouTube members. You guys are amazing. Like I said, for me it's so much fun to have that smaller community, because I'm never going to stop uploading videos on YouTube, but to have those smaller communities where I can ask your opinions on things and share some of my videos before it goes public and things like that has been really special, and chatting to you a little bit more directly as well. So thank you so much for all your love and support. Now, one of my goals for 2024 was to spend more time with family especially, and I feel like I got to do that quite a bit. And if you don't know, my family live all over the world, and some of my closest family members live in Austria, my aunt and cousin, my mom's sister, and so we got to visit Vienna quite a lot. And one of the coolest things that I feel like I got to do in 2024 was to go and see Elizabeth, the musical in Vienna. And Elizabeth is one of the most famous, I would say it's the most famous Viennese musicals out there. I'm a big theatre/musical fan. I'd heard so much about it. I'd never seen it though. And they were doing like a series of live concerts at the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, which is a beautiful, beautiful setting. I didn't vlog it or anything, but I did take some photos. And again, you can either go on my Instagram to see them, but hopefully you'll be seeing some right now as well. I went with my mom, and obviously the whole show was in German. My mom speaks fluent German. My German is kind of okay, but obviously I'm not near as good as my mom is with German, so it was nice to see it with her. And the production was beautiful. Like I said, the setting of Schönbrunn Palace was amazing. All the performers in it had incredible voices, and the musical is beautiful. I fell in love with the whole show, the songs and everything, and I loved being able to see Elizabeth, such a classic Viennese musical, in Vienna. And on that same trip I also got to spend a lot of time with my aunt and cousin, and it wasn't the only time I went to Vienna. I went a couple of more times too, and anytime I get to visit Vienna, it's very special, because not only do I get to see my aunt and cousin, it also reminds me of my granddad, because my granddad, before he passed away a couple of years ago, that's where he used to live, and I used to go and visit him every single year. So it's still a little bit hard whenever I go there, because even though it's been a couple of years, I expect him to still be there, and he's not, obviously. But I've kind of come to terms with it, and it's kind of a peaceful place now for me, because I go there and I walk around the streets of Vienna, and it reminds me so much of my granddad. So I love it. It's great. Speaking of family, another thing I got to do in 2024, which was very fun, very exciting, is that I got to spend about a week with my aunt and cousin and my mum in Dubai. It was my aunt and cousin's very first time in Dubai, and it was bang in the middle of the summer, so it was very hot. It was low season for Dubai for sure. Everything was quiet and cheaper than usual, but it did mean that we got to do some cool things that we wouldn't normally be able to do. For instance, we got to go to Atlantis, the water park, for the first time, and we actually also stayed at the Atlantis Hotel for a couple of nights. And again, none of this you've seen yet. I did vlog it very casually, so at some point this year I might put some of those vlogs up. There's only going to be a couple of vlogs from that trip, but it was great again just to spend some downtime with my family. So yeah, that was amazing too. Moving on to the 12th thing that I did in 2024, and that is D23, something that I had been wanting to attend and go to forever. Honestly, I think since 2014 or 15. So it had been a decade since I first heard about D23 and, you know, researched it and looked into it and watched other people's vlogs and just desperately wanted to go, and didn't think it would happen anytime soon because it's a full-on event. Like, it's not as easy as going to a theme park, because with a theme park you can go anytime you want, you can work it around your schedule. D23 only happens once every 2 years in Anaheim, and it's only on certain dates. It's very popular, tickets sell out very quickly, it's a full-on thing. So yeah, I still, like, you can see I'm smiling because whenever I think about that weekend, it was 3 days. All the vlogs from that weekend are also already on my channel in a playlist if you guys want to check it out. I went with my friend Simone, and we're both very big Disney fans. She has a YouTube channel as well in German, and it was just so much fun being amongst other Disney creators, Disney fans, Disney lovers. It was overwhelming and extremely exhausting, don't get me wrong, but it was one of my highlights of 2024 for sure. I loved it. Like, it exceeded my expectations. I knew I was going to enjoy D23, but I enjoyed it even more, and I would love to go again. I don't know if I'll be able to go for the next one, but I can definitely see myself going at some point again, and I hope I get a chance to anyway. But I love them. The vlogs, go and check them out, and it was, I think, the best D23 in a long time as well, because the Disney Parks panel especially announced so many cool things for all the Disney parks around the world, but especially for like Disney World and California. So many announcements, and it was just amazing to be there in the presence of, you know, Josh D'Amaro, Bob Iger, all these amazing Disney loving people and other Disney fans as well. I loved it, and I would highly recommend going to D23 if you're a fan. If you're a huge Disney fan, it's not going to be for everyone. You really have to love Disney, not just the theme parks, you know, not just be a casual Disney fan. You really just have to love every part of Disney and be interested in all sides of it to enjoy it, and also be okay with crowds because it's huge. There's loads of people there, and there were moments where I found it too much, but overall I had an incredible experience and everyone was so nice. Now, speaking of D23, the 13th thing I got to do whilst being in Anaheim was also to go back to Disneyland California, which I absolutely love. I spent about maybe 4 or 5 days there, and it was my friend Simone's very first time visiting Disneyland, so it was really cool to see her impressions of it for the first time. And I just love both of those parks, Disney California Adventure and Disneyland. It was amazing. It was incredibly busy and very hot at that time of year in August of 2024, but despite that, I had an amazing time. I loved it. Again, got to meet so many cool people, enjoy the rides, you know, try some new food, meet so many characters. I love Disneyland. I love Disneyland. I love D23. That whole week and a bit that I got to spend in Anaheim was so special. And if you want to see more of that adventure, then make sure you subscribe, because my Disneyland California vlogs will be coming up very soon on this channel. Now, the next thing that happened in 2024 in my life is definitely a sad one, because whilst I'm, you know, going through this list and I'm mainly talking about the fun, exciting things that happened, there are many bad things that happened too. A lot of personal sad things, a lot of things that I don't necessarily want to talk about, and I think it's important to share those too. And one of the ones that I do want to share is that in 2024, literally whilst I was in Disneyland, actually in the last couple of days of me being there, we lost a family member, and it was very hard. It was something that we kind of expected to happen because, you know, this family member had been in hospital for a few weeks prior to that, but it was still very difficult, and even more so because it's a family member that doesn't live in Europe. It's not like, you know, my family had a lot of access to be there for, you know, him and the immediate family around him, so it was just very difficult. And one of the things that I think affected me quite a lot, this happened in August when I was in California, and truly from like that point onwards I actually went through a very just difficult time in my head mentally. I went through like 3-4 months of, you know, just not feeling my best, not feeling myself. I was just down for a lot of reasons. I'm not sure if this was the trigger for it, but yeah, either way, it was a very hard thing to hear about, and especially, like I said, not being able to be there physically with the family. It was hard. So yeah, that happened, and it was definitely a very tough few weeks, especially, and you know, with grief, it never goes away, so it's still there. You just kind of learn to deal with it. Moving on though, let's move on to slightly more fun things. The 15th thing I did in 2024 is also quite a sad one actually, but in much different ways. So the 15th thing I did in 2024 is that I got to go see Next to Normal, the musical, for the very first time. Now, this show is a show that I had heard about for over a decade. When it was in Broadway, I heard about it. I remember people raving about it. I loved the title of it, like Next to Normal. I was always intrigued about it, but I had never, you know, dug into it too much. I didn't really listen to any of the songs. I didn't look at any bootlegs or anything. I had just heard of the musical. I knew that it was a very popular musical on Broadway once upon a time, but I didn't want to, you know, look into it more until I got to see it for myself. You know what I mean? And in 2024, last year, it was in the West End for a limited run at the Wyndham's Theatre, and it starred some of my favourite theatre performers, especially Casey Levy. She is the main reason I made time for this show, because it was on in London at a time when I was very busy. You know, I was in Dubai for some of it, I was travelling, I went to California, so I was all over the place. I wasn't necessarily in London for a huge portion of when the performances were happening at the Wyndham's Theatre, but about a month before the show closed, I was hanging out with one of my friends, Hannah, and we were debating what show to see, and I mentioned Next to Normal to her, and she thankfully wanted to see it as well. We managed to get some last minute cheap tickets up in the Grand Circle, and I fell in love with that whole show. It's literally now become one of my favorite musicals of all time. Loved Casey Levy in it. She was phenomenal, but the entire cast, that whole production, I just adored. Like, it really touched me, it moved me. I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever seen on stage. And if you're not familiar with Next to Normal, it's definitely not a happy show. It's actually about very deep mental health problems and family problems, and just, it can be very dark. And I got to see the show 3 times before it ended. Yes, literally in that 1 month before it closed, I went back another 2 times. So altogether I saw that production of Next to Normal 3 times, and it was with the same cast all 3 times as well, no understudies. And all 3 times I cried, and not only did I cry, I would hear other people in the audience crying with me, especially towards the end of Act 2. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't seen it or if you're not familiar with it. But if you have seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. And it was so refreshing. Like, the audience experience I found to be quite profound and unique for Next to Normal. And even though the Wyndham's Theatre is a West End theatre, it's not necessarily very small, it felt very intimate. The performances felt intimate. It just was such a special show to me, and I, like I said, fell in love with it. The musical is incredible. I love the songs, I love the topic, and I loved seeing it with Casey Levy and that whole cast. Couldn't have asked for a better cast, couldn't have asked for a better way to be, you know, introduced, I guess, to Next to Normal, even though, like I said, I had heard of the title of the show for many, many years before that. This was still my first time experiencing the show and, you know, finding out about the story and hearing the song. So I loved it. Next to Normal will forever now be, you know, hand-printed in my heart. I'm now quoting a Wicked quote, but yeah, I loved it so much, and it's definitely my top 5 favorite musicals of all time now. The 16th thing I did in 2024 is that I started working out again, and I think the fact that, as I mentioned, from around August, September onwards in the year, I was starting to feel quite low for a variety of different reasons. Something in me just felt the need to start exercising again and working out, and it's been the best decision of 2024 for me, for sure. And I've kept up with it every single week since, I think it was around maybe September time that I started going back, and it just makes me feel so good mentally. Obviously, exercising, working out can have a lot of physical health benefits as well, but for me, I think the main thing is mentally. So I'm really glad and actually quite proud of myself for finally going back to, you know, regular exercising. And I do genuinely think that is part of why I'm finally kind of slowly but surely getting out of that low dump moment period of my life, you know? Number 17, in 2024, I got to go on a walking tour, still can't believe I'm saying this, a walking tour of the Phantom Manor, the attraction in Disneyland Paris. And before I talk a bit more about it, I just have to thank you guys, because the only reason I was able to do this is because you guys watched the videos and was kindly invited by Disneyland Paris. It was around Halloween time, I think a couple of weeks before Halloween. It was after hours, so the park was closed to regular guests, and it was a small group of us, I think maybe around 20 or 30 of us, who got to go inside the attraction with some Imagineers and literally walk the attraction with the lights on. It was so cool. Now obviously I wasn't able to take any photos or videos because, you know, it's behind the scenes, it was going to ruin the magic, but I still did a full vlog of that event, which I'll leave the link to down below if you're interested to check it out, and you can hear my first hand comments on the experience and my thoughts on it and all the secrets that I learned and got to share with you as well about the Phantom Manor. So yeah, the link is down below. But again, thank you so much for making some of these things possible for me. It's such a huge honor to be, you know, doing anything with Disneyland Paris, but to be invited by them to go and actually have a full-on backstage tour of one of the most iconic rides in Disneyland Paris was just phenomenal. Speaking of that, the 18th thing I did in Disneyland Paris, and I'm just going to put them all together, is every other cool media event that I got to attend, whether it was in Disneyland Paris or with Disney UK here in London, or just other things, not necessarily just with Disney as well, like theatre performances I was invited to, anything really. I am always so hugely appreciative of any invitation I get, any chance that I get to do and do some cool things, and then especially when I get a chance to share them with you as well, whether it's through vlogs or through Instagram Reels. It means a lot to me, so thank you so much for, again, making things like this possible. Number 19 is that in 2024 I got to go back to New York for the first time since 2019. So again, it had been about 5 years since I was last in New York, and again, I'm a huge theatre fan, so because of that I love New York. It's not the only reason I enjoy New York, but of course with Broadway being a big part of NYC and Manhattan especially, I was so excited to go back. And the main reason I went there was actually my brother, because my brother, he had an event in Orlando called Chosen Con, which I also got to attend, and it was amazing to see him and see all the fans of the show. It was a very cool experience actually. I'll leave the link to that vlog as well in case you're interested. But then after that he was off to New York for some work, and I wanted to spend time with him because I don't get to see him often. So my mum and I flew to New York with him and got to spend about a week there. I got to see so many shows, I got to spend a lot of time with my family off camera, and it was great. It really was a fun trip and something that I cherish, because anytime, like I said, that I get to spend with family is important to me. Number 20, what I did there. And we are getting there, guys. I know this video has been very, very long, so thank you, by the way, for, you know, watching until now. Hopefully most of you are still watching, probably only 2 of you, but to those of you who are still here, the 2 of you, thank you, I appreciate you. You've got about 5 more to go. Number 20 is that in 2024 I got to experience the Christmas/holiday season in Walt Disney World for the very first time. This again had been one of my dreams for a long time. Christmas time in any of the Disney parks is so magical. I love it in Disneyland Paris. I got to experience it in Disneyland California in 2022. I also got to do it in Hong Kong Disneyland in 2019 for my first visit. But I had heard that Walt Disney World goes all out for it as well, and especially with them having 4 different parks and it being the biggest Disney place in the world, being Disney World, not just a land. I was so excited to go, and I'm so happy and lucky that I managed to go. I only had about 4 nights there, so it was a very short Orlando trip, the shortest Orlando trip I've ever done, but I fitted in so much in it. I got to visit all the 4 parks. I got to go to 2 of the ticketed events as well, so Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party and then Jollywood Nights. All the vlogs from that trip are on the channel as well if you're interested, if you love Christmas time in the Disney parks, if you're planning on going to Walt Disney World one year maybe for Christmas, then I'll have a playlist down below. But I loved it. I really did love it, and I would love to go back for the holiday season one year. Speaking of Christmas and magic, one really cool thing that happened in 2024 that wasn't planned at all is that I got to experience snow in Disneyland Paris. Another thing that I had been wishing for so long, and truly it's something that, because you can't plan for, I didn't think it would ever happen really, because it's not like I'm in Disneyland Paris every single day of the year. It might look like it based on the amount of videos that I produce, but I'm not there all the time, and it doesn't always snow in Disneyland Paris. It might maybe snow 5-6 days of a year maybe, and it's not always, you know, in the same time, so you can never really plan it unless you already are there and it just happens to snow. It's unlikely for you to see snow in the parks, and I had seen photos of snow in Disneyland Paris and it looks so magical, like a winter wonderland. And it just happens that on one of my last days on one of the trips that I had in Disneyland Paris in November, it snowed. It was literally my last day. I only had a few hours in the parks before I had to catch my train, which my train was also unsurprisingly delayed, but thankfully it did leave eventually. But yeah, I got to spend a few hours in the parks. I made a whole video about it. I took a million photos because the snow was just so beautiful. It was also extremely cold, so towards the end of my few hours in the parks, I was genuinely freezing. But it was a really cool day, and I was so happy to get to experience it. And if you haven't checked out that vlog as well, the link is down below. In fact, most of the things that I'm talking about in this video, you can either find out in the videos on my channel or on Instagram, because that's what I do, you know. I share things. Number 22. The 22nd thing I did in 2024 is that I got to work with some great companies. I had some really cool sponsorships throughout the year. I got to work with some new brands that I hadn't worked with before. Some dream partnerships, to be honest, as well happened in 2024, which I am so grateful for. So yeah, this is again a moment for me to thank you, because if it wasn't for you guys supporting the channel, watching the videos, none of this would be possible. And I feel very lucky and privileged to be able to do what I do. And one of the sponsorships that I had in 2024 was actually with View Cinemas for the release of Wicked, which, if you guys didn't know, I'm a huge Wicked fan. I first saw the musical in London in 2007? Yeah, 2007, which is almost 2 decades ago, almost 20 years ago. It's crazy. I was only a teenager when I first saw it, and I've loved it since. I've had the privilege of seeing the show numerous times. I want to say over 100 times. Yes, live on stage since that very first time. And I was so excited about the movie coming out. I was a little bit nervous because I love the stage show so much, but at the core of it, I love Wicked, so I was so excited to be working with the View Cinemas on something that I love, like Wicked. So that was one of my favorite partnerships of 2024. And moving on from that, the 23rd thing I did in 2024 is that I got to see Wicked, the movie, part 1, I should say, in the cinemas 5 times. I don't remember the last time I went to the cinema to see the same film 5 times. Genuinely don't remember. May have been one of the Harry Potter films back in the days, but even those I think I probably saw a maximum of 3 times in the cinema. Wicked, 5 times. And that's because I genuinely fell in love with the film. Like I said, I was a little bit nervous at first, but I loved it, you know, and the more I see it, and like I said, I've seen it 5 times now, the more I love it. It's kind of taking me back to my teenage years when I first got to experience the stage show. Now I'm getting to see it in a different medium, in a different way, and it's only part 1, it's only the first act of Wicked, but I love it. It was absolutely the movie of 2024 for me, and I saw loads of other films in 2024 as well, a lot of them not Disney ones. Like, one of my favorite things actually that I do off camera is to go to the cinema and see films, and I got to see some really good ones. But Wicked came out at the end of November and just blew everything out of the way and just became the film, the movie of 2024 for me. I love it so much. I'm so glad that they managed to do such an incredible job of it. I mean, everything from the direction, the performances, the choreography, the lighting design, everything in that movie just worked so well for a movie. And I think it just took me a while to accept it as its own entity. Like, it's a movie, it's Wicked the movie, and I'm allowed to love it and, you know, enjoy it for what it is, because it's still different to the stage show and it's not going to affect, you know, my love for the stage show in any way. But yeah, I think Wicked just, you know, especially it happening towards the end of 2024, I'm still thinking about Wicked. Obviously, I'm wearing the Wicked t-shirt today that I actually bought from New York when I was there in September, because I went to see Wicked there as well with my mom. It's been a huge part of my life since I was 16, and to see so many people globally get excited about the movie because of this new movie, Wicked Part 1, and, you know, get excited about the second part coming in 2025 this year. It's just amazing. It's taken me back to my teenage fangirls years, and any love for musical theatre makes me happy, and I just love how popular Wicked has become right now. So yeah, there you go. 5 times to go and watch the same film in the cinema. And finally, last but not least, the 24th thing I did in 2024. I'm slowly but surely losing my voice, guys. I've talked for a long time. Apologies. But yeah, the last thing I did in 2024 is that I uploaded, I think, something like around 143 videos on this YouTube channel that you're watching right now. That is a lot of videos. I stuck to my plan of trying to upload about 3 or 4 videos per week, which takes a lot of time to edit, to film, but I love doing what I do and I wanted to really go for it, and I'm really happy with all the videos that I produced in 2024. We definitely had our best year on YouTube as well, and I'm now really excited for 2025 and all the things that are to come. So I am out of breath. I want to take this moment to thank you once again for watching these videos. Like, literally taking time out of your day to watch this channel means so much to me, and if you like the video or comment, that's even more kind, and it really does support the channel and the growth of it. And also, truly thank you so much for watching this video. If you watched to this point, I really do appreciate you, because I'm not sure if I would have watched myself talk so long, but it was something that I kind of just wanted to do because I've been doing this style of video for the past 10 years. It's not a tradition that I'm going to be taking forward with me next year, unless you guys for whatever reason really want me to, but I just don't see it happening, because you know, next year is going to be 2025, things I did in 2025, and I just, like I said, I don't want that pressure. And I also want to point out that even though a lot of the things that I shared in this video were obviously very exciting things, just remember that these were some of the highlights. Like, there's so much in my life that I don't share because it doesn't have anything to do with Disney or theatre, and it's, you know, it's my personal life. So just because these were 24 things that I talked about, it doesn't mean that they're the only things that happened. There were a lot of other things that happened that weren't necessarily great, and they might have been some good things that happened that were personal that I didn't want to share. So this is just a list. There's 24 things that I did in 2024. It doesn't mean that 2024 was the best year ever for me or anything like that. It was just, you know, a year like any other year. Every year has its ups and downs. Even 2025, we're only about a week into it. I know it's going to have its downs as well as hopefully some ups as well. It's just the nature of life. So please remember that when you watch this video or any other videos from other vloggers doing wrap-ups of their years and their highlights. It's just highlights. Right, I need to go because actually I'm off to Disneyland Paris very, very soon. So make sure you subscribe to the channel because new Disneyland Paris vlogs will be coming up soon, as well as some announcements maybe of some of my plans for 2025. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.